Holy shit, it actually works. Welcome to Virtually Odd, the series where I take a full dive into odd virtual reality tech. Over the years, the AR and VR industry has spawned some weird stuff to say the least, from suits that deliver electric charges to your body, to brain-computer interfaces that supposedly allow you to control things with just your mind. And that is exactly what we're looking at today. This is the Next Mind, a brain-computer interface that translates the brain's signals into actual commands for really anything, from moving blocks to blowing things up, or even changing a TV channel with no controllers, just your brain. And this device that reads its signals. And that's just the thing, no controllers. Imagine being able to control your favorite games, or at least some part of the game or devices around your house with just your mind. For me at least, that's kind of a dream, and some of my favorite franchises to this day have almost conditioned me to be excited for this sort of thing. The first one that pops on my mind is Sword Art Online and Ready Player 2, but I'll focus on SAO for now. The basic premise of Sword Art Online being people use a super advanced virtual reality headset called the Nerve Gear, and essentially the Nerve Gear is just a futuristic, hyper-advanced brain-computer interface, in concept not that far from what Elon Musk is doing with Neuralink, or from this, the Next Mind. Basic idea being that you control a virtual avatar with your brain just as you'd control your body. In lore, Nerve Gear intercepts the signals that would be sent to your body to move, and instead route it into the game or program. Of course, Nerve Gear also has the ability to write onto neurons as well, allowing you to experience smell and taste and even discomfort, even though there's no actual stimuli, and obviously we're not there yet. And I'm not quite sure we're gonna make it there by the time 2022 hits, but right now we can see the precursors, the kind of devices or simple BCIs that are available today for anyone to buy, the kind of devices that become Nerve Gear in the future. Now, this isn't my first time covering a brain-computer interface on a Virtually Odd. Almost a year ago, I covered the Lucid Link, a BCI that uses sensors on the front of the headset to measure brain activity through an EEG. Basically, these little electrodes are constantly reading electrical signals through your brain, and software does its job to try and interpret those signals. And it was cool, but it was expensive at $300, the same price as a Quest 2, and it honestly didn't work that great, and sometimes I couldn't tell if it was even working at all. The best way I can put it is it felt like the results were kind of arbitrary. Programs told me I was focusing, so I guess I was focusing. The problem is that it uses EEG, and EEG is pretty finicky, easy to trick, and easy to misread, and in the medical world are constantly a source of misdiagnosis of things like epilepsy, leading to up to 30 to 40% of misdiagnosis due to either wrongful use or interpretation of EEG data. And I'll be honest here, nothing as advanced as Nerve Gear or Neuralink will be using EEG as its primary source of information from your brain. I can almost promise you that. And that's what piqued my interest in the Next Mind. Yeah, it's technically an EEG, but it does things quite a bit differently than any of the others that I've seen. You'll notice that the Next Mind doesn't have any typical looking electrodes, but that's just what these are, dry electrodes or sensors that go on the back of your head and measure signals from the visual cortex, the place in your brain that processes what you see. Using what Next Mind calls direct brain commands, your eyes see these visual tags that show up on interactable virtual objects, and that spikes activity in your visual cortex. And using some machine learning algorithm through the Next Mind engine, that data is decoded from brain activity to a direct brain command. This is kind of like eye tracking, but without a camera, and instead going directly to the brain instead of the eyes to get information. The question is though, does it actually work? This device is even more expensive than the last one, the Lucid Link, at $400. And for for what looks like and feels like a piece of plastic, so let's put it through the paces. First off, this is of course fully compatible with VR and any VR headset you can fit over the device. But I'm going to start out using a monitor to get a baseline before I try out the VR app. Starting off, calibration is interesting. You throw the strap on your head and kind of comb the device in the back of your hair to get the sensors as close to your scalp as possible. A quick test is performed, then to actually calibrate the system, you stare at a flashing circle with a very odd pattern. This pattern is very important though, and I'll touch on that in just a bit. First, let's try some of the demos. The first one is creating music with your brain. As you can see, there are a number of instruments and variations here, and all you have to do is look at and focus on the pattern that you want and it'll start playing. Simple, but it gets the point across. Let's start with some drums. Not these drums, how about these ones? And a synth, and ambience, and maybe some hi-hats too. And reset. Yeah, it works. It actually works, to my surprise, and accurately too. Next, there's a platformer where you have to use your brain to lower and raise platforms as well as explode your enemies, and once again, it's working. I stare at a platform and it goes up when I want it to, and I look at an enemy and boom, they're gone. Feels like I'm actually controlling what's happening on the screen, which is a huge difference from using the last brain interface I talked about. Everything felt very arbitrary with the Lucid Link, and rarely was it ever used to actually select something, and that's not the case here. In fact, this is all pretty much on or off switches, which is basic, but it works at least. Another demo shows off changing a TV channel and pausing and muting just using your mind. And the funnest of the demo applications I tried was Brick Breaker, a legitimately somewhat challenging game due to the latency of this device, where I move the pad around to deflect an object back at bricks with, of course, my brain. So we know it works at least on a monitor. And I'm sure you're starting to see some of the amazing applications this can be used for, and you can also imagine some of the drawbacks. How this works is objects are tagged with this little overlay you see and are given commands through the SDK, like grow or shrink or float or really anything that you want. But any object or button you interact with using NextMind has to be tagged with this overlay. It's not like you can control things blindfolded is what I'm saying. You have to be looking at it. The special thing about this tag is it's optimized to really trigger the visual cortex. This pattern does something to our brains and allows the NextMind software, the NextMind engine, to pick it up and complete whatever command was programmed. And it's an insane feeling to look at something, focus on it, and the software just knows what I'm looking at without any eye tracking at all. In my testing so far, it's actually never been wrong. I even tried to throw it off with a couple beers and it was still right. And something I noticed as well is as I used this more and more, I kind of got better at it. I learned how to focus my attention and gaze where I wanted the software to do things, and the reaction time of the software was getting better, but the latency was still very noticeable. But staring at a monitor, while cool and all, and this is really sweet, I want to see how this does in VR. So let's go throw it on the headset. Luckily, one of the demos provided is actually a VR game called Mindvasion, where aliens with giant brains are invading, trying to shoot you, and you have to defend the station using your own giant brain, focusing on them and blowing their brains out. Kind of interesting. And something awesome about this thing is that you can use any VR headset as long as you have a good connection on the back of your head with the headset on, which is awesome considering other BCIs I've used require a specific headset. For this demo, I'm using the Valve Index, and for controllers, I'm using nothing but my mind because there are 0 controllers required. If I want to teleport, I simply focus on a teleport node and I'm there. When the aliens spawn and try to shoot me, I look and focus on their head and make them explode. It's an extremely simple game, but it gets the point across and it actually works. I am completely controlling this game using only my brain and body. Not gonna lie, even though it's simple and honestly not that much of a full-on game, it's amazing and it makes me feel like I have virtual reality superpowers. It's hard to explain with words what it feels like to think something and then watch it happen while in VR, and this really makes me think what else is possible with this. What if someone made a full game with this device or added support for it into their games? And right now, I'm not saying you could fully adapt a game like Half-Life Alyx or Boneworks to be completely controlled with NextMind. That's not what I'm alluding to. But instead, as of now, this technology technology could be used to supplement your experience. UI and menu navigation could be massively streamlined. Or using a hybrid approach, games could combine normal VR controller input with the BCI technology to improve the user interface. How many times in virtual reality have you tried to grab something, but you grab the wrong thing? You may know what you want to touch or grab, but the game doesn't. It can't read your mind unless you let it. And this could help that, to make games and UIs more responsive and connected to the user than ever before. And that's really what this is for. This NextMind kit is a developer kit meant for people to implement this technology into their applications. And the SDK that ships with NextMind is powerful enough and simple enough to really do some special things. And that brings us right to how this will change everything. Eventually, and not saying this device, but these types of devices. Brain-computer interfaces are the next step in connecting our physical bodies in reality to the world within virtual reality. In the short term, we may see BCIs like the NextMind just ship stock on VR headsets, not as add-ons or dev kits, but instead as features meant to improve the connection between human and software. Yeah, this is limited tech, it can only do so much, and I may be talking it up quite a bit, but I want to emphasize I'm extremely impressed, and compared to last year's EEG-based BCI that I tested, my mind is kinda blown. But at the end of the day, it's just a non-invasive EEG that measures brain signals from your visual cortex. And it's argued that you can just accomplish this exact same thing with far less latency by using just eye tracking. But that's kind of the thing. Eye tracking doesn't measure brain activity. It measures where you're looking, but it can't measure intent. So I ask, why not both in the future? The speed of eye tracking with the intent of a brain-computer interface. And why stop there? This, in conjunction with more sensors, just gives developers more room to work with. And scarily on the flip side, way more biometric data to track, but that's a topic for another day. If we are truly on a path towards full dive, where you put on a headset and everything is controlled by your brain, then devices like these are the stepping stones to get there. Gabe Newell talks up and down about how he and Valve want to bring BCIs into VR headsets, and soon. And Elon Musk takes the other route with Neuralink and more invasive methods like a physical chip implant to not only read information from the brain but also write, hypothetically providing similar sorts of sensations that SAO provides within its lore. So no, this is not full dive, not even close. This obviously isn't nerve gear, but nerve gear doesn't happen overnight. It starts with devices like this. This is the next step. We had headsets, now we have headsets that can work with our brain. And maybe in the future, when we all lay down and throw on our Index 10s or Quest 7s to link starts, we'll look back at devices like these and think about how mind-blowing they were at the time, but also take a moment to realize just how odd these early VR BCIs really were. Here's to the future making the past look weird. Hopefully you enjoyed this Virtually Odd. I will be streaming and actually testing out this BCI on my Twitch stream today, so stop on by if you want to take a look. I've been working extra hard on cool content for the channel lately, and I just want to say thank you to all the support and comments and love. Every like and subscribe and comment helps me out massively. I also want to thank all of my Patreon supporters, especially my Omegas like Alexander, Atomali, Benji, Biz, CPCJ79, Debonair Fab, Destroyer Biscuit, Birdtrap, Fusion Oak, HCG Randon, It's Lumi, Jonathan, KR, Lucid VR, Mud King, Ronzarelli, Skirt Cobain, That Brock Guy, Very Evil Shadow, and Zale. I couldn't do any of this without you. Don't forget to like this video if you loved it, subscribe if you want more of this, and hit that freaking bell if you just can't live without it. Much love, Thrill out.